Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. And I want to say Shalom to Yakmanakwath out there pursuing this truth diligently. Coming at you again with another lesson. And this is going to be the part 2 of America is in a state of societal decline. Okay, part 2. So yesterday we touched on the first part, which would be institutions, losing legitimacy. And of course, we got the ChatGPT up that, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai spawned it. All right, because again, the question that I asked was, if America began to fall like Rome, what would be the signs in a modern society? And basically, what it named is all stuff that's already happening or is in the very early stages. All right, before it fully happens. Right. So, number one being institutions lose legitimacy, as we got yesterday. It reads, people stop trusting courts, elections, media, banks, churches, universities, whatever used to anchor society. Another institution would be the police department. Okay, the police department. And we have that happening, in full scale. All right. I mean, look what's happening with the police. Look what's happening with ICE. All right. And ICE is just the insurrection group. All right. That's all it is. They're just being led to lead an insurrection and basically lead a crusade, a racial crusade, all right, against the Israelites, okay? And they're not only just targeting Israelites, they're also, they shot that woman, what was it, Renee Good, all right? They shot that woman and killed her, all right? And again, what she did wasn't circumspect, but, and it can happen because you know how these people are in society, but by all technical definition, it wasn't worthy of being shot however many times in the face. That's insane. All right, that's an insane overreaction. And they're trying to say, she hit him and stuff. And again, they're trying to police what you see with your eyes and you hear with your ears. Okay, and that's just that's textbook propaganda. All right, there was that quote. Not to believe your eyes and ears. Or George Orwell. Yeah, here it is. I believe it was 1984. Yeah. And people have been quoting it a lot, and that's what they're doing. It says, the party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. George Orwell, 1984. All right, in his book that he wrote. That I believe he wrote in 1946. All right, I think around that time. But yeah, man, that's the get out of here. But yeah, the party that told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears, it was their final, most essential command. Why? Why was it their most final and most essential command? Because they can't operate off of the basis of, we're doing good, when all you see them doing is wickedness. Okay? So they tell you, don't believe what you saw. Don't believe what you heard. It doesn't matter. Reject what you saw. All right? It doesn't matter what you saw. All right? Believe what we tell you. Okay? And that's what's happening. And that's why these one other reason, all right, in the bag, all right, of why institutions are losing their legitimacy. All right? Police will go into a house, shoot a bunch of people up, and they'll say that's not what happened. All right? And then here it is. There was, and that's really why camera phones were a horrible fucking invention for these devils. All right? And the internet as well. Camera phones and the internet, horrible invention. I believe it was actually one of the Rockefellers. I believe, I know the Apostle Gabar quotes it a lot, but they said, one of the worst things we did was create the internet. All right. And why? It allows people to talk freely. It allows people to share evidence. All right. And more so on top of that, let alone with cameras and video cameras. But now with, when you had camera phones or picture phones, when those first came out, as they were called back then, all right, in the very early 2000s, I believe the late 90s, all right, but early 2000s, You could take pictures and stuff like that, and that was already one thing. Everybody could take photos, but when they started having, smartphones, that's the worst thing ever. All right, smartphones were the worst thing ever that they could have done, because now I can be in an event. Not I would go to those type of events, but say anybody, I won't use myself as an example, but anybody could be at a protest or an event, or the same thing with Renee Good. They could have their phone out, as which we literally got the evidence from about the whole situation was using a phone. They can pull out their phone, all right, and in a matter of 2 or 3 clicks, have the camera app open and recording. Boom, and guess what? Since it's a smartphone, they can scroll over to their right page. Boom, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all right, YouTube, all right, and they can have that going live on 4 or 5 platforms in a matter of, minutes, all right, after that video has been filmed. And they can't, when they have a bunch of people doing that, they can't possibly stop all those. All right, they can eventually remove them, but I mean, they've been, I don't want to say, how would the word, shared. They've been shared to Reddit, all right, other forums that aren't even popular, all right. So it's horrible. So when that happens and people are seeing these things, these institutions start to lose legitimacy, because they'll tell you, oh, we went in there and he attacked us and we shot him. I'm just making up a fake scenario, right? And then the video shows that he was just sitting on the couch, all right, and they went in and shot him 8 times, all right? And they're saying, no, he acted aggressively. Meanwhile, we all saw the video of that person not acting aggressively, right? So, and they're saying the guy that shot Renee, they say, oh, he was hit by the car. If anything, he might have been lightly clipped. If anything, he didn't stumble hardly. All right, he stumbled backwards. He jumped backwards and grabbed his gun. All right. But it doesn't show him slipping and falling to the ground. If you got hit by a car, you would be on the ground. You would fall on the ground, or you would be under the vehicle. All right. The bumper might have bumped you. It might have bumped you as they were taking off, but that it didn't hurt you or clip you or send you into the fucking ER. All right. They're saying the guy went to the hospital and all that. It's, and with those situations, more than like, it's like the same thing. It's like what they tell people, to lie in an accident. They say, oh, if you get in an accident, make sure you go to the hospital, because it'll make you look like you're hurt, and then you can possibly get some money, right? That's why these people, they do this insurance fraud. They try to do this bullshit. So that's the same thing. They probably said, hey, look, you need to go to the hospital so it looks like you did get hit, all right? Because we're going to have to find a way to justify this, and it's not looking so good, champ. Right? So I'm using that as an example because we just talked about that other day, but that's an example of institutions losing their legitimacy. All right? Whether it goes on the court, election, media, banks, churches, universities, police, all right? You can't believe them anymore because they're all full of shit. All right? They're all full of shit. And that's what we touched on yesterday. And like it says not just I disagree, but the whole thing is rigged and fake. It's all rigged and fake. It's fake. It says Rome hit this hard when offices became transactional and symbolic instead of respected. Transactional, that means money. All right, money. All right, with Mr. Krabs. Right? That's all they're all just a bunch of Mr. Krabs. All right. So anyway, what we're dealing with today, that's our little opener, but what we're dealing with today is political paralysis and constant infighting. And that really ties into this whole situation as we were talking with the police and talking about ICE and the whole Renee Good situation still, all right, because that is constant infighting, okay? That's, the blue against the red, all right? That's the left against the right, all right? The Republican against the Democrat, right? And that's how they want it. And they want that with everything. They want the Republican against the Democrat, the poor against the rich, all right, the black against the white, all right, the black against the Mexican against the black, right, so-called terms. They want to keep everybody fighting. And there's already going to be animosity between Esau and Jacob because of the birthright, but they want to keep everybody fighting, all right? They want to keep everybody fighting, okay? And again, that's all, they don't really have control because really they're just puppets, and the Lord's the ultimate puppet master. All right, he doesn't realize he's pulling their strings, or they don't realize that he's pulling their strings. They reject the Lord, not realizing that everything that they are doing is set in course thousands of years ago on a script. All right, not literal script. It's not like the Lord has an actual physical script. He could if he wanted to, but he, everything was predestined. All right, who would be the elect, who wouldn't be the elect, who are the heathens, who are the Israelites, what was going to happen, all right, how these things were all going to go, all right, everything. And you'll have people that try to say, well, why did he have all these things happen then? Because everything has to have balance. I was watching a lesson by the Apostle Bar earlier, and it wasn't talking about the same thing, but he was talking about, a false balance. All right, the Lord doesn't like a false balance. We can go and get that. All right, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord. Okay, Proverbs 11:1, it says, a false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Okay, and he went on to talk about how, the Lord made everything in twos. And I was really thinking about it. You can't have good without bad. All right, you can't have hot without cold. You can't have left without right, up without down. You can't have fat without skinny. All right, you can't have dark without light. All right, you can't have so many different things, man. There's so many different things. All right, you can't have wet without dry. All right, you can't have man without female. Right, you can't have hell, what else? All right, you can't have sweet without salty. All right, or sweet without bitter. All right, everything is in twos. All right, and that's just how it goes. You can't have life without death. All right, you can't have rich without you can't have the rich without the broke. All right, everything is in twos. Okay, so that's a just weight. All right, that's a just weight. All right, a false balance, though, is an abomination to the Lord. And that's why society had to be the way it is. All right, you can't have good without evil. All right, and you can't understand what good is without understanding what evil is. You got to realize this is a learning tool for us. And a lot of people, I say, oh, well, why did he make it to where Eve went off? If he has all this control, if he's all omnipotent, why did Eve go off? Why did this happen? Why did Israel go off? Why did Esau do that? Why did Esau reject the birthright? Well, why did the director make the movie the way he did? Because it's his movie and he wanted to make it the way he did. And without those things being done, all right, things wouldn't exist. Well, if he's the Lord, couldn't he have you have just learned without having to go this? He could just Sure, he could have. He's the Lord. He could have, but that's not the way he wanted things to go. All right, everything has happened in a natural and gradual progression. All right, that's the best way to learn. All right, when you go and you read a book, all right, you generally, all right, unless it's a really short book, you open it and you read, a couple chapters, and then you set it down, go do something else, might come back and do it. You don't sit down and read, a 7,345 page book, all right, in an hour, all right, and just, I remember everything, right? Yeah, but if you do that, guess what? You're not going to retain as much information as if you, bit off little by little and, gradually grew into it, okay? You're going to remember it better for, you're going to have a better recollection probably for the first, maybe day or so, but the information fall off is going to be worse than if you gradually learned, all right? Because repetition builds skill, okay? But anyway, so a false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. So the Lord doesn't like a false balance. So everything has to happen to a reason, all right? For a reason. You have to have Jacob, all right, if you have Esau, all right? You have to, for Israel to be the chosen nation, there has to be other nations. All right, and everybody has to fulfill their lot, okay? And Israel's was to be the chosen, all right? The Lord's peculiar people, and heathens were not, all right? You can't have a top without the bottom, okay? You can't have a good without the bad. You can't have a holy without the unholy, right? And that's how it goes. So, and that's just how it's going to go. And, yeah, so political paralysis and constant infighting. But the Esau, they want to, again, unknowing to them, this is the Lord, but they want to keep society in a state of fighting, infighting, or chaos. Their motto is order ob chaos. All right, order chaos, I believe. All right, order ob chaos is a Latin phrase meaning order out of chaos. A motto of the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. It's just not necessarily just the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. It's just, the 33rd degree of Freemasonry. And they're all Freemasons. It's all, and the level, Freemasons aren't nothing. I'm a Freemason. You're not a Freemason, buddy. You're not a Freemason. You went there, you watched a play, and you call yourself a Freemason, and you worked your way up through, certain smaller ranks. You'll never get to the degree that these higher ups are in. All right, sure, there might not be any sacrifices going on in your little lodge. All right, that you're at now. Your little lodge is, I'm a Freemason, and the guy that went to my college, we were all part of the same, Freemasonry lodge, and we were in the same. What do they call those things? Frat house and all that. And, he sees that I got my Freemasonry little symbol on the back of my car. And, if he's a police officer, he'll let me go. This is way deeper than that, buddy. All right, your version probably didn't have the sacrifices. Once you get higher and higher and higher, they're doing things that you don't even know about. All right, for example, the Mormon Church is a level of Freemasonry. They try to hide it, but they don't tell you what's going on in those rituals. All right, when you go through the temple, but you can go and look up the videos and see what's going on. Extend your hand through the veil, and they do all these handshakes and poses and all these different things, and you take vows and rites and all that. And they say, oh, we can't talk about it because it's what we did to the Lord. It's a promise that we made with the Lord, and it's supposed to be secret. Why is it supposed to be secret? All right, why? Because it's between us and the Lord. Well, everything's between you and the Lord, but does that mean it needs to be secret? All right, it's not like a prayer. You don't need to tell everybody what you prayed about that given day. But you know, if you and you can say things like, oh, I prayed for spiritual clarity, or however. But these guys, oh no, we can't talk about it at all. Why? Why is it so secretive? All right, if the church wanted to abolish everybody thinking and demonizing them, just let them know, oh, we do a couple handshakes, we go and do this, and that's that. All right, but when you see the videos, you realize how fucking weird it is. All right, you realize it's really fucking weird. Okay, and it doesn't give off religious, it gives off cult. All right, it gives off cult, and cult is really another word for a religious thing, but this is like a I should say a Masonic, or what's the other word? Like not just cult, but occult. All right, there's a difference between cult and occult. All right, occult, hidden secret, mysterious knowledge of phenomena beyond ordinary human understanding, supernatural forces, magic, mysticism, like witchcraft. All right, that's what it's giving off. All right, occult. Okay, occult. All right, when you look up occult, this is what you see. All right, you see the little book of occult. They got the TA, right, with the Ouija board. All right, that's occult. It's giving off that. It's not giving off regular cult. It's giving off occult. Okay, but yeah, so Order Ob Chao. That's how they, it's an official motto of the 33rd degree of Scottish Rite, symbolizing the establishment and order within Freemasonry itself in the 1800s. It represents inner alignment, finding clarity, and creating connections and bringing purpose to inner chaos. Sure. No, they get order out of creating chaos. That's really what the motto is at the end of the day. So they have to keep the constant infighting going. Right? They have to keep that. Little do they know that the Lord's going to, utilize that against them. Right? And they're eventually all going to be set against each other. Okay? They're all going to be set up against each other. Sorry, I clicked the wrong one. The Republican against the Republican, the Democrat against the Democrat, this president against that president. There's going to be so much infighting that they want to do the whole Order Ob Chao thing, right? But it's going to get to a point where there's so much infighting that it's even going to affect them. All right? And it's going to affect them negatively, mind you, by the way. So Isaiah 19:2, it reads, "And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight every one against his brother, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom." And of course, in this case, Egyptian is referring to the Edomite against the Edomite. Okay, like it says, and they shall fight every one against his brother. All right, so these people that you once, were dear to you, all right, there's going to be infighting, okay? Going back into infighting, constant infighting. It says, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. All right, and really, major civil wars, all right, are going to break out. All right, there's already been several miniature ones brewing, but there's going to be a giant civil war that breaks out. All right. So what does it say here? It says political paralysis and constant infighting. It says endless factional warfare where nothing gets solved, only blocked. Leaders focus on short-term power or power grabs, all right, instead of long-term stability. And that's really how it's been for the past few years. If you look at the political system in the United States of America, leaders are focusing on short-term power grabs, right, instead of long-term stability. The Democrats get in, they do what they want to do for the Democrats, and then the Republicans come in, reverse it, do what they want to do. Democrats come in, they reverse it. It's not a long-term stability and what really helps America as a whole. It's what they want to do. That's short-term power. Okay, short-term power. It says instead of long-term stability. It says in Rome, this turned into civil wars. Before that, it looked like non-stop gridlock and dirty tactics. That's what's happening right now. All right, is dirty tactics. All right, and what's the technical definition of gridlock? All right, what is gridlock? All right, a situation where no progress can be made because opposing factions are in a stalemate. Yeah, essentially. All right, they're not, and that's really what it is, because America's not improving. All right, and it can't improve, and the Lord has it for this way for a reason, because Babylon's on its way out, and Babylon is, the USA, United States of America, and they're not focused on long-term stability. All right. Now, Trump said, we're going to make America great again. No, you're not. No, you're not. It's impossible. It's impossible. Even if you wanted to make America great again, all right, even if the Lord, let up and allowed you to try to do what you wanted to do, which he wouldn't, you still wouldn't be able to make it great again. All right. And or the amount of work that would have to be done, all right, to make America great again is absolutely insane. And it's also subjective. Okay, it's also subjective, because what do you mean by making America great again? All right, as Hal or Heisenberg, what's his real name? All right, what's his real name? Who's he played by? Who played him? Bryan Cranston. As Bryan Cranston said, he said, you got to think about it from the lens, from a different lens. He said, when was America ever great for the black man? All right? Absolutely. And Bryan Cranston, this guy could be a Jake. You don't know. All right? We don't know at the end of the day. We have no idea. All right? But at the end of the day, what is making America great again? Because you can't make it great for everybody. Okay? You can't. And making great again as in how? It's subjective. Okay? And even if they wanted to do it, they couldn't. All right? Say you wanted to go back to 1940, 1950. All right? Say that's what you wanted to do. Well, feminism is long, deep-rooted. So how are you going to get that out of the minds of women after it's already been a concept that's been promoted to them? Okay? You're never going to have housewives or traditional wives. All right? There might be some women that are okay with it, but a vast majority are not going to be okay with it. All right? And the some that are okay with it are very, very, very seldom. Very few. Very few. Okay? In America, at least. Over in India, you have, that's what the women are dedicated to, is being a woman and being a mother. All right? That's the best thing that can happen to them. Not over here in America. All right? Sexual freedom is the best thing that could happen to an American woman. All right? Sexual freedom and power over a man. All right? That's the best thing that could happen to an American woman. So how are you going to say, we're going to make America great again and have traditional roles when these people aren't going to go back to that? How are the homosexuals that have been being homosexuals for 30, 40, 50 years, how are you going to get that out of their mind? How are you going to undo the transgender aspect? How are you going to undo the non-binary aspect? How are you going to undo sex changes that have happened? How are you going to... It's impossible to make America great again. Are you going to bring back all the businesses that went out? You're going to bring back Circuit City. You're going to bring back Blockbuster and all these things. Well, not necessarily in the 50s, but you're going to bring back all the box stores, the big box stores. You're going to bring these back. You're going to somehow make Halloween and Christmas a more everybody knows, all right, that has lived longer than the last 10 years. All right, the Halloween, like I said, even back in even if I was in the world now, I wouldn't want to celebrate these Halloweens and Christmases now. They suck. All right, and I don't even celebrate them, and I can see that they suck. Right? Halloween and in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s was lit. All right, you would see thousands of kids, not literal thousands sometimes, but hundreds of kids running through the streets in their costumes, and everybody had candy, and all the lights were on, and there was 2 or 3 haunted houses that they set up on the block, and you could go to McDonald's and they'd give you a Halloween bucket. They'd have a whole Halloween campaign for McDonald's. You'd go to the malls and they'd have a whole setup. Same thing with Christmas. You'd see people would be going around, deck the halls with balls of holly, going around and doing carols, and everybody would have their hats on. They'd be walking around. The malls were absolutely extravagant. They'd have giant Christmas trees that were decked. All right, they'd have fake snow in certain places. It was insane. If you go and look up 80s Christmas, all right, it actually had the vibe of how they want Christmas to be. All right, you can go and look up mall. Okay, look at this. That's Christmas. Okay, look at this. That was Christmas. Look at this. Look at this shit. That was a celebration. If you go and look up and it's probably still going to show 80s pictures. Yeah. Mostly 80s pictures. All right. For Amazon, there's Christmas shopping in the mall. Again, that's an old photo. Why don't you find any new photos? Because they look like shit. Okay? They look, here you go. This is what you get now. All right? See how look, December 2025. The vibe's not there. You can't tell me that this vibe is comparable. Well, I mean, this is just a little section, but you know, it used to be like this everywhere. Okay? Now they have a little section like this, a little, you know, that's nothing. But I mean, let's go back to the 80s. All right? Okay, and again, I'm not condoning it, but I'm just showing you how far America has fallen, even in the 90s, even in the 2000s. All right? All this went away. And now you get like a little tree. All right? Look at all these people. All right? The people were more together. You know, there was nobody on their phone. Look, nobody, back they didn't have it, so nobody was on their phone. Look, two men talking to each other, people talking to each other, sitting down, enjoying the world. You can't bring that back. You can't bring it back. Okay? You can't bring that back. And this is all part of what made America, quote unquote, great. Okay, look how people are talking about it. They're a magical place around Christmas time, the 80s and 90s. Who else remembers how special that time? Well, I don't remember the 80s, but I remember the very early 2000s, and they looked not quite to this level. They had toned down to about this level, a little bit less, all right? But they still had stuff like that, like this, all right? But, and this, right? But how are you going to make something great again, all right, when everything's failing? Okay, so again, not condoning those holidays, but I'm saying they're not even doing wickedness good anymore, right? And that's their what do you I'll say coup de grace, but like that's their claim to fame is their wickedness, and they're not even doing the wicked holidays and Saturnalia good anymore. Okay, like I think I made a joke. I was like, if you're gonna try to get Jake to celebrate something, at least try to make it good. It's not worth it. All right, it's not worth it. Nobody has money to afford the presents. They don't really decorate like they used to decorate anymore. You know, I remember when I was a kid, we used to drive through, a Christmas and a Halloween, go look at decorations. You know, when me and my wife, these last few years as we drive around, and because we're just going out and doing regular shopping on those days. Well, can't do much on Christmas, but there's still food places that are open. As we drive through our neighborhoods to get there, there's nothing. There's like two houses that really decorated. All right, two. All right. I remember every single one used to have the lights. Now there'll be like three that are really decorated, two that are really decorated, and like maybe six might have some semblance of like a strip of lights. All right. They might have gone and they've got like that little projector thing. All right. And again, I'm not upset about it. I'm just saying you can really tell by the holidays that America's falling. All right. That's a good determining factor, is by looking how the people are celebrating. They're not really celebrating anymore. All right, they're just depressed. So it says in Rome this turned into civil wars. Before that it looked like nonstop gridlock and dirty tactics. So yeah, man, that's what's happening. All right, that's what's happening. So let's grab a couple more scriptures and we're gonna close it out. Little like 30-minute little lesson here. But yeah, man, it's just Esau society is just, they don't have anything right. All right, they don't have anything right. Everything's confused. They can't even do. It's all men thinking they're women, women thinking they're men. You got people out there that think I'm neither of them. I'm nothing. I'm barely a human. I'm non-binary. You're not. What are you talking about? Non-binary. How? Everything is binary. Everything is binary. Okay. What does binary mean?
Binary.
All right. Related to, composed of, or involving two things. Call Yahweh Meow Shai. That goes back to the rule of two. All right. You're either male or you're female. You're either alive or you're dead. You're either right or you're wrong. Right? That's it. All right, that's it. So yes, you do belong to a binary system of twos. Yes, Or you would be, well, I'm not dead or living. I'm just, you're just what? I'm just, so you're just going to add a pause there? Yes, I'm just, you're something. That's for sure. And that something's fucking dumb. Right? You're something, all right. So yeah, man, let's get Mark 3 and 24. That's the other thing. You got the straight people against the fucking wackos. All right, wackos against the straight people. So look, Mark 3 and 24, it says, and if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. This is Yahushua speaking. How is it, if you got a kingdom divided against itself, how is it going to stand? And what do we have right now? A kingdom divided against itself. All right, Republican and Democrat, straights and gays and all these different things. All right, they're everything, rich and poor, right? Any way they can divide you, you're divided. And it says plainly in Mark 3 and 24, and if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. Let's go ahead and get that in the Amp Bible. Let's go and check it out. It says, if a kingdom is divided, split into factions, and rebelling against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. Faction. What is a faction? Okay, well, it doesn't want to work, but faction. All right, Democrat and Republican. Oh, don't even need to explain it. A faction, a small organized group within a larger one, like a political party, government, or organization that has different ideas, interests, or goals, often causing dissent or conflict. There you go. Often causing dissent or conflict. So, how are you gonna how are you gonna have that work? It's not. The Lord Himself said it. And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. Mark 3 and 24. There you go. Look, and 5. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. So let's go get, again, I want to experiment a little bit here. Let's go back to the Bible Gateway and let's go ahead and just check out a couple. All right. So again, back in the Amp Bible. But let's go ahead and move on to, let's get the Christian Standard Bible. It says, if a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand. That's good. Let's get Complete Jewish Bible. It says, if a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom can't survive. And if a household is divided against itself, that household can't survive. I'm just grabbing random ones. Let's get the Darby translation. I'm just grabbing ones. If a kingdom has become divided against itself, that kingdom cannot subsist. And if a house has become divided against itself, that house cannot subsist. Let's get the Disciples' literal New Testament. All right. And if a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom is not able to stand. And if a house is divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand. Let's get the easy to read version. Ooh. A kingdom that fights against itself will not survive. A family that is divided will not survive. Okay. We'll leave it. We'll leave that scripture with that. The easy to read version. I might get some more of this easy to read version. There you go. A kingdom that fights against itself will not survive. Why? Because it's fighting against itself. Okay, that's like a snake eating itself. All right, that whole Ouroboros thing. All right, with a snake, and it's a thing that real snakes do when they're stressed. If it eats itself, it's just killing itself. Okay. Oh, it's getting full. All right, but it's getting full on itself. Okay, which will inevitably just kill it. Okay, and the state that the world's in right now it's in a state of disarray. All right, and we're in a state of societal decline. All right, a state of societal and moral. All right, and moral decay. Okay, because when society declines, people's morals are declining, and when people's morals decline, people's society declines. All right, they're synonymous with one another. Okay, you can't have a stable society while the moral decay is at an all-time high, and you can't have a stable. So let me repeat. So you can't have a stable society when moral decay is at an all-time high, and you can't have a decaying society. I'm confusing my damn self. Okay, let me write it down. Okay, if the state of really they tie in with each other, but you can't have high morale when the state is declining, and you can't have a high state when morale is declining, for lack of a better word, is how I'll put it as. All right, confusing myself and others. Don't want to do that. But yeah, so if society is declining, the other one falls right behind it. All right, with moral decline. Okay, you can't have one without the other. All right, here it is. You have a declining society and morale is just high. All right, that's not how it works. Oh, we're just happy. No, their morale is going to be low because the society's declining. Okay, it's simple. So, let's get Proverbs 29 and 2. And it reads, and this is why really ultimately the society will not work. All right, this is ultimately why the society will not work, and it's because it's the wicked are in rulership. All right, you can go and get the earth is given. We can go and get that, Job 9:24 to prove it. It says Job 9:24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the judges, he covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? This is referring to Esau. All right, the earth is given in the hand of the wicked. Who's in rulership right now? Who's on the money? Esau, the so-called white man. Again, not every white-looking person is an Edomite, and not every person that looks like John Shaft is an Israelite. All right, there's going to be underliers. Okay, it's about cultural lineage. All right, through ethnicity, not about skin color. You can be you can be an ethnicity and be multiple different colors. All right, it's about what your ethnicity is, not about what your skin color is. And ethnicity on your father's side. All right, it's about your paternal ethnicity. All right, that's how it was judged biblically. All right, and they declared their pedigrees after the house of their fathers. You can go and look that up. Type in KJV after it, and it'll come right up. I guarantee it. All right. And why is that? Why did they declare their pedigrees by the house of their father? Because that's how lineage was determined in ancient Israel. All right. And that's how it is determined today by your father. And we don't always, we can't go and do ancestry tests, and those are all lies anyway. Okay, if you're a so-called black person or a Latino person or Native American, all right, you're gonna go back and they just go off. Oh, if you're black, they're gonna say, oh, African. All right, because they go off the results. If they know that DNA is Israelite, they can just change it in their system to say African American. So now when you do it, it's gonna say African American. All right, that's all it's gonna say. Okay, that's all it's gonna say. So it's not a definitive characteristic. Now, how do you really know if you're an Israelite? Well, if you understand these scriptures and you call them on the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, there you go. All right, if you truly understand the scriptures and you can truly call upon the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, not deceitfully, okay, but truly in sincerity, and you repent and you pray in the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, only an Israelite could do that. Only an Israelite could do it. So, Proverbs 29 and 2, and the reason why all this is happening, this decay, all right, Proverbs 29 and 2, it says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. And again, we got that the earth is given in the hand of the wicked. And then that's why people are mourning right now. All right? That's why people are mourning right now. All right? So, and it says, uproars of the people. Check this out. This is how you know we're close to the end. All right? 2nd Esdras 9 and 3, it says, therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world. What is an uproar? All right? An uproar is a loud and passionate noise or disturbance, public expression of protest or outrage, outcry, protests. Is that not happening? It says, of the people in the world, then shalt thou well understand that the Most High spake of these things, from the days that were before thee. Again, as we talked about earlier, how the Lord, said all these things were going to happen before they happened. It says, even from the beginning. For like all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest. All right, that means sure, it's true, it's going to happen, obvious, clear, okay, evident, it's apparent. All right, the end is manifest. So this is all dealing with we're approaching the end. All right, we're approaching the end, and not the end of the world, but the end of Esau's society and the beginning of Jacob's society. All right, through Yahushai. All right, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. It's something that was promised to Yahushai, and Yahushai is gonna share his inheritance with us. All right, because he's merciful and graceful. All right, and he's better than us. Right? So, So political paralysis and constant infighting, right? Economic decay masked by financial and political tricks, all right, is the next one that we're going to be doing. But Lord willing, we might probably try to do that and another one. But political paralysis and constant infighting. Another reason that, another proof, all right, they say the proof is in the pudding. Another proof that America is in a state of societal decline, right? That's what's happening here. So, we got a couple more. It goes all the way to 10. Some of these are just going to be talking points, like laws stop being applied evenly. We're going to lump those in with another list that actually has scriptures to go with it. And like I said, we might get scriptures that aren't necessarily on this list, like I did today, through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. But yeah, man. So that's it. All right. We're gonna close out there. All right. Lord, what was edifying? Again, I'm gonna give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakak. All right. It's through Him that we have this knowledge and this understanding, the Holy Spirit that allows us to make these lessons. So Barak the Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakak is not able to be praised enough. All right, anytime we pray Him, we should be able to pray a billion times harder. All right, it's impossible to praise Him as enough as He actually deserves praise. It's physically impossible to give Him as much praise as He 100% deserves, because He deserves prayer that's or praise that's so powerful that it's physically incapable. We're not able to pray to Him enough. All right, you cannot go far enough. All right. So, and again, Barak the Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai for giving this knowledge and this truth and understanding. So that's a prayer that you should always send up. So, shalom, brothers and sisters. All right, keep enduring, keep the faith. We're almost out of this hellhole. All right, until next one, Lord willing, shalom.